This is Duke University.
I'm Blair Shepard, Dean of the Fuqua School of Business, who are hosting you today. Ladies and gentlemen, multiple board members from all sorts of groups at Duke who are trying to help us make sure we're doing our job better. Students, Shell and Time and Fortune, and distinguished speakers who I'll let Dan Vermeer introduce. We're thrilled, just thrilled to have you here. And we're actually thrilled for the reason. It turns out that one of our students actually wrote the best piece in the world on energy, and this is just cool. So Will, if I could, would you mind standing up? Will Vaderhans. I want you to hear this again, the best piece in the world on energy. And it's important to understand that actually the sponsoring organization, Shell, and Time and Fortune, who put this together, actually canvassed everywhere. And, you know, we're just thrilled because in some ways we have a student who won the award in the year that we created the entity that, in a sense, he epitomizes for us in the school. We just, as both a university, and you're going to see some pretty interesting stuff coming out in a while, and the business school in general have said it's really critical for us to actually get our arms around energy on a global basis. It's just essential. And in some ways, if you think that the job of a university is to get people to think about society and create leaders for society, one of the fundamental tasks we have to grapple with is the creation of a sustainable energy model that solves two problems. The first is because of the creation of inexpensive energy and mobile energy in a way that we've never had in the history of the world, we've actually brought billions of people out of poverty in the last 20 years. And to shut that off means there's a whole lot of people in the world who would lose a future, and none of us want to live in that world. But it's probably the case that the particular form of what we're doing is not sustainable. And so we have to solve a simultaneous equation problem where both of those equations are pretty darn tough. That's going to require all sorts of capability from around the world. And in a university, it's going to require policy school, engineering school, basic sciences, even health and law and business to work together, because that problem doesn't sit in one school. It sits across all of them. And so an important point for us is that this panel sort of epitomized the kickoff of a focus at Duke, both in Fuqua, where we're trying to really do a good job of creating the business leaders the energy world needs, and we're trying to be a good partner with the other schools at Duke to create the leaders the other schools need. And in the best of all worlds, if we get someone smart enough, someone actually sit at the interstices of those schools and actually be the leader the world needs in toto. And so it's wonderful to have Shell and Time and Fortune be willing to come here to recognize a student and then create the conversation we're about to have, because that conversation essentially epitomizes a commitment that we've made as a school to figure out how to create the leaders the world needs and the research that actually help work this problem. And one of the ways to do that is to get some really amazing people talking in front of us so we get to participate vicariously and directly in the discourse. And so I'm thrilled the four of you are here, and I'm thrilled that the sponsors are willing to do it. Let me say no more except welcome, and you're in for a real treat. I'd like to introduce the person who was crazy enough to say yes when we asked him to do it, to introduce the speakers and introduce the panel on energy for tomorrow. That's Dan Vermeer. So as he's walking up, let me do a quick piece of introduction. Dan actually was the head of sustainability at Coke, and therefore in some ways is a water expert, right? He came here thinking he was going to run a sustainability program, and he arrived and we said, Dan, by the way, you're about to run energy development and global environment, and understand that energy is on the front end of that, and development global environment is on the back end of that, and so you're going to become an energy guy. Because he's a brilliant human being who recognizes how important the issue is and recognizes that the world needs leaders now, he said, I'm up for it. And I'm thrilled he did, because we got the best guy in the world. And so we have two of them, right? Best student in the world and best leader of students in the world. And let me at least let you hear from one of them. Dan.
Wow, that was a great introduction. I really appreciate that. Tough to live up to following Blair under any occasion, especially when he introduces you that way. I agree with Blair. I think we're in the business of creating professionals that are so much more skilled and grounded in the true 360 dimensions of this issue than what we could ever be. The world's desperate for leaders who get it, who understand the interconnections of these issues and can take them from the global complexity to the everyday realities of trying to make your business work, to be profitable in a hyper-competitive world. And how do you make that translation? So I'm really thrilled to be able to bring together this group here, to see our boards represented. The Edge board is here, as is the Board of Visitors for the Fuqua School of Business, and to kick off a couple of days of great activities for us as we dig deeper into the nature of the energy challenge and the role that a school like Fuqua can really play in driving that forward. I would like to just give a little bit of context. I think you heard the story. Essentially, you know, we were excited to see that Shell and Time and Fortune were doing this competition on the future of energy. It's great to see that kind of visibility getting in front of the general public. I think there's a huge gap in the realities of these questions and what most people actually understand about them. There's a huge gap between the system we currently have and the system that we need. And I think the organizations that are working together to raise the awareness of those issues in the general public and to really put, you know, give visibility to the best, most innovative concepts are doing really great work in this area. I, too, am thrilled that we have Willem here, and I was going to introduce him, but obviously you've gotten to know Willem pretty well in the last few minutes here. I'd also just like to reinforce, I think he's exactly the example, along with many of the other students we work with, but the example, the prototype of the kind of student we want to be able to train and really develop here. You know, smart, well-trained in the kind of integrated disciplines that are relevant to these issues, committed to really seeing a better world and working on these issues, innovative and creative in terms of thinking about the solutions, and willing to do the hard work to actually put them into practice. So, Willem, it's great to have you be sort of the carrier of that great weight, but that's, I think, a great example of what we're trying to do generally here. As Blair said, energy is fundamental. It enables everything we care about, from health to mobility to transportation. You just think about the world of energy that we're all immersed in, from the cell phones that are in your pocket, to the lights on, to the very temperate environment with our new temperature policy here, which is to try to drive as much efficiency in the building as we can. It's all around us, and yet there's an enormous innovation, I think, imperative that we face. We know a few things. We know that energy demand is exploding. We know it's going to continue to accelerate around the world, and that there's no end in sight in terms of the amount of energy that it's going to take to meet the needs and the demands of people around the world. We also know that we're reaching the limits on many fronts, the environmental limits, but also the limits of our infrastructure and potentially the limits of our ability to create the kind of financial momentum to really transform our energy system. So we face limits on all sides. We also know that the current system is not up to the demands of the future. that it be global and universal. I am absolutely convinced we're on a path to universal energy access. On what timeline, we don't know, but I think that's a given. It needs to be radically efficient beyond the system we have today, which is incredibly inefficient in many ways. It needs to be intelligent, it needs to be sustainable, and it needs to be affordable. And I think there are several levers that can begin to unearth this, and I hope we have a chance to dig into these. Certainly, governments can play a role, whether they choose to do so, whether they're positioned to do so, I think is remaining to be seen. The role of technology and its ability to really create transformative opportunities in this space. The role of finance. Right now, there's an enormous amount of global capital that's on the sidelines, not sure where to invest. Certainly, there's a huge need here, but there's not the certainty to allow for that kind of investment to happen. So I think the challenge we're taking on here is defining what are the parameters of that challenge, what are the features of the new system that we're trying to create, where are we making progress and where are we stuck, and who will the winners and losers be in this process. I'm excited to get on to the presentation, so I'm not going to spend any more time kind of laying the context. I think you all have that. I do have a few important sort of logistical considerations I need to share with you. One is that our little bit of innovation around this session is that we have introduced the audience response system. So all of you should have gotten the keyboard when you came in today. And if you didn't raise your hands, there's people that are available to pass those out if you'd like to get them. During the discussion, between the questions for the audience, you'll also be able to share your questions for the Q&A for the panelists, so you can essentially text in your questions like the directions here give. And I guess if we are ready, we'll do a dry run here, a couple of easy questions just to give you a little practice here. The first question is, are you a Blue Devil? Yes or no? You might want to cover the keyboard if your answer is not the appropriate answer on that. And we should be able to see. Okay, we're well represented here. Just know there are 16% of others here, but let's make them feel welcome. I think we want to be welcoming to those who came in from the outside. Second question: what category best describes your age? And again, this is not named. You'll be anonymous in this process, so please report honestly in these categories. Okay, yeah, about what we'd expect here. And finally, we do want to do a bit of a pre-test, post-test. How familiar are you with the challenges facing the energy industry now? Okay. Well, let's get to work on moving those bars to the right. I'd like to introduce our speakers. We have really distinguished guests with us today that I think not only are real experts in their area, but I think offer a really interesting cross-section of the energy world. We've had discussions like this before, and the energy world is so vast. So the part of the world that you're able to sort of elucidate with any given sort of set of people up on the panel is a real challenge. But I think these panelists bring really interesting perspective to this question of accelerating energy innovation. We have Richard Williams with us from Shell. He is the president of Shell WindEnergy, where he leads Shell's wind energy activities, including the operation of 11 wind farms in North America and in Europe. He joined Shell in 1980 after he received his electrical engineering degree from Penn State. He worked in a variety of Shell's regions as an engineer, including the Gulf of Mexico, California, and Illinois. And since 1987, he's held a variety of positions, including commercial development, effort of a major restructuring, spent 3 years as operations support manager for Shell's pipelines and distribution terminals, and served as the commercial manager for Shell Distribution North America. And I think what Dick brings is a really interesting perspective on making renewable energy work in the context of a company that's in the fossil fuel business. And so I think playing out what the opportunity is there, how that opportunity is really invested in his company and what are some of the challenges of doing that. I think he brings a really interesting perspective. Second, we have Kateri Callahan. Kateri brings more than 21 years of experience in policy advocacy, fundraising, and coalition building to her position as president of the Alliance to Save Energy, where she's been since 2004. The Alliance to Save Energy is a non-government organization headquartered in DC, and its mission is to advance energy efficiency worldwide to achieve a healthier economy, a cleaner environment, and greater energy security. Kateri has a very distinguished background. She served as co-chair for the Keystone Center Energy Board, on the boards of the Business Council for Sustainable Energy and the Building Performance Institute. She's also an advisor to the United States Chamber of Commerce 21st Century Energy Institute, and is one of among 23 inaugural inductees to the new Energy Efficiency Hall of Fame established by Johnson Controls. I didn't know there was an Energy Efficiency Hall of Fame, but I'm glad that there is, and I'm honored that we have one of the representatives here. Prior to joining the Alliance, Kateri was president and executive director for the Electric Drive Transportation Association. And in front of me, we have Chuck Swoboda. Chuck is the CEO of Cree, the company that is based here in the Triangle, but working internationally in the LED lighting space. He's been Chief Executive Officer since 2001, a member of the Board of Directors since 2000, and President since 1999. He was Chief Operating Officer from 87 to 2001, and Vice President of Operations from 97 to 99. He served as Operations Manager and General Manager of a former subsidiary to Cree called Real Color Displays, and as an LED product manager from 1993 to 94. He was previously employed by Hewlett-Packard Company. Chuck and I have had a chance to get to know each other over the last few months, and I knew that Chuck would bring a lot of fresh and provocative insights. I think his challenge was exactly on this question, which is that there are huge changes that need to happen, but there are also huge barriers to be able to unearth those. And who are the people who are going to be able to work and really unleash the innovation potential that's here and overcome those barriers, whether they be policy or financial, in new and creative ways. And then finally, I'd like to introduce Michael Elliott, who will be our moderator for the panel today. Michael is the Deputy Managing Editor of Time, has been with Time International Editor since 2005. He oversees all content included in Time's US edition, Time.com, and all aspects of the 4 international editions. He previously was the editor of Newsweek, political editor of the Washington Bureau, and chief of The Economist. He's the only person to ever held senior editorial positions at all 3 major international news magazines. Michael is very familiar with this field and will lead us in a discussion of the Energy Innovation Challenge today. Michael, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. Welcome to Duke University, and welcome to all the panelists.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you very much, Dean Shepherd. I always try and get my thank yous out at the beginning of sessions like this because I'm always terrified that I will forget when it comes to the end. So, Dean, it's a pleasure to be here. Dan, it's a pleasure to be here. And just one more time, we are here because of Will's essay. Give him another round of applause. Dan was generous in saying that the panel had tremendous expertise when it came to energy innovation. I don't have any expertise. If I have any expertise here at all, it's helping people like our terrific panelists really put their stuff in front of you as quickly and as expeditiously as we can. We had a terrific conversation in the green room a few minutes ago, and I know that you're in for an absolute treat. I can see a couple of familiar faces in the room, actually, who I've moderated before. I won't look directly at you, but Nice to see you here as well. And just as a final scene setter, ourselves at Time Inc., I do a number of jobs at Time Inc. I'm a columnist at Fortune. I'm deputy managing editor of Time. I run Time International. And Shell have partnered on a number of tremendous initiatives around the world for the last few years. And this project that is before you today, hosted by the school here, is just the latest of a very, very happy series of partnerships that we've been able to do with Shell. And without more ado, now I'll sit down. But before we get going, Kateri, I can't really resist. What do you think of the temperature of the room?
Actually, it's amazing. I'm actually pretty comfortable. I don't know about you all, but typically I go in, when I speak, it's freezing wherever you go. That's one thing in the United States, almost wherever you go. And I have friends that know the business that I'm in, of course, and they want me to start a campaign with hotels. They get very, very upset because the hotels have the cards that say how green they are and all the work they're doing, and don't throw your towels down, reuse those, put this little tag here, and meanwhile you can't control the temperature in the room and you have to bring a sweater along with you. So I congratulate the school for the temperature in the room. It's very pleasant but not overly.
Well done, Dean. Well done, Dean Shepard. Well done, Dean Shepard.
For the record, we'd like it cold.
And man, if you can persuade them in North Carolina to do it, I mean. Dick, let me start with you. We had a terrific phone conversation last week when we were getting ready for this, and we thought we'd look at the topic in three dimensions, through three prisms, through technology, through what public policy can do, and some of us watched the president's press conference yesterday when he directly talked about energy issues. And thirdly, there's a kind of social context here, which we'll touch on too. But here you are in one of the world's leading, most exciting, most innovative fossil fuel companies, but you're doing something different. Mm-hmm. Give us a quick little conspectus of the technology, if you like, the technology innovation that's going on, not just in that makes someone whose whole career has been in the energy business excited right now?
Well, first of all, it's a joy to be here. 30 years ago, when I hired on to Shell, we were truly a fossil fuel company. And when I left pipeline 2.5 years ago, people asked me why I sold out. Even my neighbors made fun of me because they knew I was very proud of my large carbon footprint at home. And now I'm above ground with a wind business. Why are you doing that? And it was after about 2 weeks in wind that I was bitten by the bug of this renewables and this alternatives thing. And, Shell has been in biofuels for 40 years. We have been doing some scenario planning and all this. We've had a hydrogen business. We've had a solar business. We have wind. We have sold clean coal licenses to China. There's this whole thing there. But I get into wind, and if you look at a turbine, how many of y'all have seen one of the full-size turbines up close? There's 13,000 parts in one of those. And it's about a $4 million gizmo, and it has a whole slew of steel and carbon and things like it, but it has a lot of computers in it. It has a black box in it. If we have a failure, we can reconstruct what's happened and what's going on and what have you. And what you're finding is that there's a lot of technology from other pieces of the industries being applied. And in clean gas technology, in 2012, we will actually produce more gas than oil. And so we are looking ways to use that gas cleaner, different processes, cutting down the carbon sequestration. That's a combination of drilling a hole in the ground and pumps and compression. And so it's reusing things. But the neat stories I tell, on the wind business is one of the problems we have when we're building these, or challenges I should say, is the view shed. because you have folks who own the property that the wind farm's going to go on, and it's been in their families for generations. And they don't have 401ks and retirement plans like the rest of us do. And so they're looking for a way to monetize this land. Well, right next door are the folks who have bought the 15-acre ranchettes. They build a house. They go out there on the weekends after they're through playing Green Acres. They're sitting on a chair, drinking a beer or a wine or a Coke, looking at the horizon. What do you think they not want to see? They don't want to see a turbine sitting out there. And so what we do is we use some technology from the computer animation industry. We go out, survey in a bunch of points on their property. A computer weaves those, sort of like SimCity, weaves them together. We can program in the exact wind turbine we're going to install at the locations and sit on their front porch with a laptop computer and show them what they're going to see. This is something out of the movie industry, but it works. We've also, on a separate project, the local folks wanted to see a flyover. What would this look like? We hired the company that actually did work on Lord of the Rings and used some of their technology to come in and help us. And so what we're finding is that people think that these green things, you know, solar and wind and geothermal and all that are quite unsophisticated. They're actually quite sophisticated in what they do. And you look at biofuels. We're into second and third generation of biofuels now. And how do you get out of the food chain? And how do you get into straw and cellulosic material and things like that? You have geothermal. You have hydrogen. You have energy efficiency, which it's great Kateri's here because this is a huge thing. Shell just built, I just moved into a brand new building. It's LEED certified, and we were freezing the first week, by the way. They couldn't adjust it quite right. But I didn't know that LEED buildings can have a shell that's one certification, a core that's a different or something like that, you know. And what is so exciting, I'd like to be 30 years younger for various reasons. But the big one is to be an engineer or to be a young person like Will, coming out of school, knowing what we know now, knowing the things ahead of us. And if you really look at it, this is not the perfect storm we're in. This is the perfect opportunity. And the opportunity comes from you have aging equipment out there in the industry now producing power and electricity and what have you. You have a huge shift change of what's expected and what is regulatory required in the environmental world, and you have all these new technologies that you get to put together. And so, you know, we all have a choice, and this is why I'm bitten by this whole thing, is that we all have a choice. We can either be bystanders and watch the game, or we can be participants and be in the game. And trust me, there's a lot of things to play with in the game right now.
So, Kateri and Chuck, how do we encourage people to play in the game? How do we encourage people to take advantage of the new technologies that Dick has indicated? How do we encourage people to be more efficient in their energy use? How do we try and encourage companies to move into this business and create opportunities? Chuck, you've got some pretty strong views on how we can and can't encourage this stuff.
Well, so first of all, you got to ask yourself if you would put in place a policy to control the climate to save energy. Why would you use the world's most inefficient light source in the same room? So right now, there's about 7,500 watts of energy generating the light in this room. And we could do it for 1,000. And what you're mostly getting is heat. And the amazing part is, it pays for itself. And yet, almost nobody does it today. And so one of the challenges is, even when you can win the argument on economic or other basis, so few people do it. And the question is, why don't they? And look, there's lots of different ideas. You know, we've spent the last 5 years really focused on energy efficiency, and within that, the LED lighting space, because if you look at the opportunity, 20% of the energy roughly in a building is electricity, and that's related to the lighting. And so if you think about what we could do by driving efficiencies down by the magnitude I discussed today, you can imagine how much energy we could save. But
so why don't we all do it?
We don't do it because today I think we've wasted too much time making this an argument that's social or environmental. Those benefits are real. But the only thing that really matters on a consistent basis is economics. So look at the polling data from the election. What do people care about the most? The economy and jobs. What's interesting, I'm pretty sure just about every election in the last 50 years, except maybe one or two during the Cold War, that was probably the same thing. So we keep trying to win an argument that's social responsibility and green and let's do the right thing. And by the way, this energy efficiency will solve that. And there's nothing wrong with those things. But the problem is to get people to change, you got to win an economic argument. Because at the end of the day, that's how people vote. And so for us, it's been about, can we find ways to drive policy? But also, can we find ways to simply remove the economic barriers? And so our idea as a company was, make it pay for itself in a short enough period of time, people will do it anyways. I love the fact that we have the Alliance to Save Energy driving policy, and we can use that. But at the end of the day, it's a whole lot easier to make a product so good you can put it on the shelf at Home Depot and people buy it because they get it. And too much of this technology we're working on today, I think we want to force people to do it. I think we've got to figure out is how do we make the math work and they'll do it themselves. And I think it's a challenge. That being said, I think there are policy things we can do. And I think it really starts with we need to raise the standards to drive the innovation that creates the technology, not a technology. We shouldn't mandate LED lighting. We should. I'd like that. My shareholders would love it. But that's not my point.
See, deans can. Yeah. Deans can.
Well, he can do that.
Deans can just
that's
mandate.
A separate thing. Right. Here at Duke, we should mandate LED lighting, but that's a local thing. But there we go. A gift. I got that. But we have to find a way to get some standards out there and let industry use the free market to solve the problem. If we try to force people to do it, there's 1,000 reasons not to. If we let the economy and the innovators do this, we get all kinds of benefits. You get industries, you get innovation, it creates more jobs. The whole process works, and the industry will pick the right technology. And I think we got a little caught up in the last few years trying to pick technology a little bit. And I think you got to be really careful because at the end of the day, if you pick the wrong one, it's wasted money. And so I think the idea is to raise the standards. And I think today we're struggling to do that. Because the reality is the standards we put out there are so low today you can use 50-year-old technology to do it. It's better than we had, but we should push a lot harder. It's kind of like if you want to drive innovation, do you try to go to Chicago or do you try to go to the moon? Right now we're trying to go to Chicago.
Kateri, you come in.
Yeah, let me just underscore a couple of points that he's made and also raise a couple of others. I agree that if you put the right products in the market and people understand how they can be used and that they benefit the consumer, then they will buy them. But I think a lot of the problem that we've got, I dump the problems we've got into 3 buckets. One is consumer education and awareness. If you're there shopping at Home Depot and you're looking at an incandescent light bulb and it costs 25 cents, and you're looking at a compact, funny-looking fluorescent light bulb and it costs $2, you're a consumer, you look at it, you think, well, gee, why would I know this 25-cent incandescent works, I'm going to take it home and I'm going to use it. And I bet you that most people in the audience don't know that if you opt for that purchase, it's going to cost you about $60 more over the life of the light bulbs to run that light bulb than if you simply purchased the $2 CFL. So you have an education and an awareness issue. Buying we've been talking about temperature controls, buying a programmable thermostat and setting your house to always be comfortable when you're in it, but not to heat or cool it when the only one home is a goldfish. You're going to save a lot of money. You're also going to improve the environment. Probably not the first reason that consumers will do that, but you've got to make the investment. You have to spend that $40, $50, $100 to get that piece of equipment in, and then you've got to program it. So we've got work to do educating consumers, educating businesses, educating policymakers. The other piece that goes along with that education is how do you go about educating? And as Chuck said, Greg Merritt works with him, and I think whenever I think of Cree, I think of Greg, not Chuck. But now I'll think of Chuck. So
Maybe not when we're done arguing.
but we've done a lot of, the Alliance to Save Energy does consumer education and outreach campaigns, and we've done this for about 15 years. And we do market research. And what matters to people, what motivates behavior change isn't the environment, as Chuck has said, it's the pocketbook issues. It's saving money, and then it's, after that, things close to them, their family, their community, the air they breathe. So I believe, as I think Chuck was making the case, we really have to twist and turn the messaging on energy efficiency and on clean energy to match what people care about. Yes, we still get the environmental benefits from it, but we'd never get to those environmental benefits if we don't hit home to what people want to see happen. We've got a very, very conservative Congress coming in, much more conservative than we had the last go-around. I think that it is representative of a conservatism that is sweeping this nation. And so we have to understand that and message to that. If you read the New York Times a couple of weeks ago, Salina, Kansas was highlighted on page 1. They've been able to knock off 5% of energy use in that city through a competition of a number of cities in very, very conservative state, very conservative communities. They weren't knocking down energy use to address climate change. In fact, the polling there showed that most people were skeptical to non-believers that something was happening in the climate. They were doing it for thrift reasons. They were doing it for patriotic reasons, for energy security reasons. They were doing it because it was a competition with other areas. And they were doing it to save money. And that's really, I think, the messages that we have to drive home. We could talk about policy and some of the market barriers, but to me, that's one of the most critical things is getting the messaging right so that we actually make people aware, give them the tools they need to buy the right products, the information they need, and then incent them to do it in a way that has meaning in their daily lives.
So helping consumers, not helping consumers, creating an environment in which consumers, as it were, push the innovative process themselves by demanding certain goods, certain processes,
Right.
certain savings. Dick, you wanted to come in?
Well, it's just, and this money thing is a big thing, though. These economics on the changeover. And because, A, these changeovers are long processes, 5 to 10 years probably, when you look at changing minds and hearts and things like that. In the story I tell, these same neighbors who thought I sold out, they questioned me why when they went to the local grocery store and they could sign up for these all-wind plans, they're more expensive, and quite frankly, it's pretty easy to walk into your hotel room and turn on the switch and your light works at 12 or 14 cents kilowatt hour, whatever you pay. And they joked, but they were serious. They said, Dick, the wind is free, so why am I paying more for this? Well, the problem is, for each turbine we install right now, it's a $4 million event. You pay $3 for the turbine, $200,000 to get it there, $100,000 in spare parts, $500,000 to build the foundation and put it in the ground. Our last wind farm was 132 of these. So it's a $550 million project that you're putting a bet on, 6 or 7 years out. And so I absolutely agree, but we as a society, who has the best cell phone systems in the world? They are the countries that did not have alternative economics, did not have copper lines out there when they installed it. And so we have to figure out some way on the economics. You're absolutely right, Chuck. We need to figure this out, how to make it incent me or incent you to go out and pay $4.97 for that bulb, because you aren't going to see that payout right away.
Before we go completely down the road of looking for incentives and whether we get structure incentives and what role policy plays, though, I want to make sure that we don't completely lose the sight of what technological breakthroughs are coming and what ones are difficult. And this is an opportunity for you to talk about transmission, which I know you've been thinking a lot about.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Yeah, if you look at it, picture in your mind a map of the United States. And picture this sort of colored area that's down the Rocky Mountains, 2 states on either side. Well, that's where all the good wind is. There's some offshore, but most of the wind in the U.S. is there. Okay, picture, where are the load centers? They're out on the thing. They're here. There are other places. And so the trick is, how do you get those electrons out to California or to Texas or to Chicago or the East Coast. And so transmission lines right now, $1.5 million a mile. And if we all decided we were going to build one, we'd all be 9 years older before that transmission line was in. And you'd have to find someone who would help you permit it across state lines and everything like that. So you know, there's a lot of great wind left in the U.S., but to get
it's not going away.
It's not going away either. And to get it to a grid, it's about a 100-mile connector just for us. That's not even having a transmission line. So I can build that transmission line, $150 million. Well, to back up the food chain into my project, wind project, I have to put in more turbines, make it a larger project to amortize the cost over. Well, then the power company comes to us and says, sorry, we can't take variability because wind is a very fickle thing. And so then you're starting to talk about newer technologies, right. Storage technologies, you know, underground compressed air. And it's sort of like the water pump storage that they use out in California a lot, but off-peak times, you will pump air into the ground, underground caverns. Peak times, bring it out, mix it with some natural gas, have a sort of flatten things out. We had talked about the biofuels. You know, how do you make them? How do you transport them around? Carbon sequestration. You know, all the technology for CCS exists, and that's basically drilling a hole or finding some aquifer, putting the CO2 in, capping it off, and it's there. It stays. The problem is, to even make one of those break even, you have to have a carbon price of about $105, $110. We can talk about that later. But there's all kinds of tech stuff there. Wind turbines, like I said, you have a whole slew of computers. When we fail a gearbox, it's $250,000 to replace that gearbox. We're working on smart systems now, and we're going to start instrumenting our gearboxes using technology from the space program and from the manufacturing sectors to actually watch our failures and our failure modes and see if we can back up and stop them before we have a $250,000.
Let's go to, if I just say let's go to one of the questions, Dan, is that going to work? Where's my tech? Where's my tech help?
He's out there in the
Where's my
right up there with the
So
thumb.
can we do the first? Can we put the first question up? Here we go. There you go. What is the biggest challenge facing the energy industry today? Growth in demand, resource stress, national security, inefficient infrastructure, directly to Dick's point, environmental impacts, regulatory context, or a competitive, the need to find I guess that's the need to find a competitive energy market. What do you think? Let's go for it.
No, I think it's not need to find. I
Oh, what
think
is
it's
it?
that it is a
That it is.
competitive energy market. Is that the challenge?
That's the challenge. You're
Yeah.
right. You're right. Okay. Inefficient infrastructure. That's just because you've been listening to Dick talking about.
I'll take a break. You can re-answer
Look at that.
if you want.
You're a persuasive guy. 52%.
I got
It's got to be. It's the competitive energy market, folks, that doesn't put a price on carbon. That doesn't price externalities. I think that prices matter. If the price of gasoline goes to $4 a gallon, people buy passenger cars. They don't buy SUVs. We saw it. We've got hard evidence. People drive less. If the price of electricity in your home is so cheap that it doesn't hit your pocketbook and really rate in your budget, you've got no incentive to change. So I actually think number 7.
I think it's a problem with the question.
Okay.
No, this is the problem we face that they're not facing in other countries. We are solving a problem today. That's not the problem. We have an energy industry that's built on an old set of rules and assumptions that is getting ready to go through a radical transformation. Look, I think most people in this room who've ever read The Innovator's Dilemma know those guys are in trouble. Now, there are companies that are making huge investments in the new technology areas, right? So they're basically trying to reinvent parts of their business. But they are economically disincentivized to change. They're paid by their shareholders to increase their profits. If I don't drive profits up, I get fired. That's how public companies work. So if we want to think about this, what we have to figure out is what's the energy problem tomorrow? And if we think about that, we would drive a different set of behavior. In China, they're not investing much in solar. So when I sit down and meet with the people in the central government, you ask them why. Because it doesn't pay for itself. It's a lousy economic argument today. They're building a solar industry, though, because they actually think it's going to work eventually. So they're trying to build an industry not for today, because they see it's one that drives their economy now and leads them to an advantage later. They're doing huge things, though, in efficiency. They actually have some amazing transmission projects in China, because what they've figured out is, in 20 years, how do you run in a country of their size with their growth, with the energy limitations we have? And so I think this is our challenge. I agree we have an inefficient infrastructure and we have these other things, but we're trying to solve today's problem. We got to think about what's the problem that's coming, and if we solve that one, we'll be in the right place. So I think it's kind of your perspective, and maybe that's just come in the business of trying to change big, slow industries.
I'm going to go right from you to the second question, actually, and in 2 seconds, you're all going to see why. Which country is the most innovative player in the global energy market today? China, Germany, India, Russia, US, or other? And the correct answer is...
Define innovative.
Wow. I tell you what, these are some very interesting questions. Now, I spent a lot of time in China. You spent a lot of time in China. My sense of all questions to do with the environment and energy use in China are that they have problems the like of which most of us can hardly imagine. And as a consequence, China is the world's great laboratory for trying almost anything. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And the other thing is they're trying it with, look, there's a slight difference in how they institute central policy in China.
Right.
Essentially, think about it like a huge corporate organization. The board of directors makes a decision, and they're able to try things in ways that we would never try to do it. And it doesn't mean it's right. They actually do it in different ways. But absolutely. And I think they're trying to solve very specific problems that drive their business. The way I look at China decisions is they're trying to make business decisions, and they're using policy to get there. And I think that's slightly different than how we look at it in other places.
Dick, come on.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. You know, the key here is in the global energy market, because they're working on stuff on their own, back on their turf. But I can tell you there are, I think, 27, if I'm not mistaken, 27 new turbine manufacturers coming out of China right now. And I met with one of them in Dallas a few months ago, and we had a 1-hour conversation through an interpreter. I'd never done that, but it was very interesting talking with this person. And at the end of it, he goes, "Mr. Williams, we want to supply turbines to you." He said, "We have a signed letter of credit from the Chinese bank for $6 billion to invest in the United States." And you start thinking about it, that's a lot of money to bring their technology over here. And your statement, Chuck, about the policy, you know, if you look at the U.S. policy, it's a sine wave that's varying amplitude and varying frequency. And so we're up, we're down, and the Chinese have just put like a DC bias on it, saying, we're going to force it to here, and we're going to make it happen. And so Evil Dick thinks, well, you know, what China can do, though, is that with this money, if our policy does not, you know, nail something down, like extended tax credits or PTCs, they can synthesize it in how they price and how they finance and things like that. So it's a masterful move if you really
well,
look.
let me just
Kateri,
say,
come on in.
Yeah, let me just jump in and say, I mean, if you look at what the governments did with their stimulus dollars when everybody's trying to gin up the economy, China put in 3 times as much money as the U.S., $170 billion towards green activities, towards energy efficiency. 3 times what we did. They also, again, because they have a central government and they just lay down the law and thus be it and so be it, they have the most aggressive fuel efficiency standards in the world they're putting in place. They're building energy standards that they're putting in place. The government speaks, the people do. The businesses follow suit, and they're pumping tons of money into this and into conventional because they've got to do it all.
Now, we are not going to have and do not want a government and a policy-making machinery like China's. So I watched that press conference that the president gave yesterday. We're going to get onto the policy issues now. I watched the press conference that the president gave yesterday, and he said, well, when cap and trade gone, forget it. However, one of the areas in which the administration and the new Republican leadership in the House and the Democratic majority in the Senate may well be able to come together on are a whole host of energy and environmental questions. What would you like them to be talking about if you wanted to accelerate innovation, which is our goal here? That's what we're trying to do. If the president is right that there is a cluster of issues there that people can usefully talk about, Chuck, you go first. What would you like them to talk about?
Well, look, we don't want to try to let the government solve the specific problem. I mean, we could try, but I'm not sure that Amtrak or the U.S. Postal Service or General Motors is my idea of the right idea. With that being said, the policy, we need a policy that drives market behavior to solve problems, and we want it to be innovative. And the reason we want it to be innovative, if we're talking about domestic, we're talking about the domestic agenda, the one thing we do as a country, and I see this every day around the world, and we have more employees not in the U.S. than in the U.S., but we are very good at innovation and solving problems. We have to create policy to allow the businesses to go solve the problems, and they'll work it out. But the idea today that we have fuel efficiency standards, but we really barely have building codes today. Right. Now, we're making some progress there, but the reality is you're not allowed to buy a car, or GM can't build a car with a certain level that isn't a certain standard, but you can put a house and you can put heaters in that generate light. It doesn't make any sense that we wouldn't want some basic standards. And I'm not trying to force the consumer to pay for this all, but I have a feeling that if we just raise the standards, here's the reality. We all talk about the consumer and the light bulb. Reality is that's a tiny part of the problem. It's the commercial and government infrastructure that consumes most of the energy. I mean, if you take away the cars, it's a huge part of the energy. So buildings, commercial buildings is a huge piece of this. And every day we're building them to building codes. We could simply raise those standards, whether we do it at the federal level or somehow make it happen at the state level or both. And I think you'd see the shift start to happen. And what you'll see is businesses will pop up to solve those problems.
Kateri.
I agree. First of all, I would say, though, commercial buildings and residential buildings in the United States are about equal in terms of their energy use. Together, they represent the largest sector. They're about 40% of the energy use. So I would argue you want building energy codes for commercial buildings, but you want them for new construction, new homes as well. We're working on that. I think it's an area where you might see bipartisan agreement. We have building energy codes that were part of the climate and energy legislation that went through the House and that, very importantly, went through the Senate Energy Committee. That was a bipartisan bill, Senators Murkowski and Bingaman. Those building energy codes would set federal codes that have to be adopted by the state that drive us to net zero energy capability in homes and in our commercial offices by 2030. That's a game changer. That's setting the standard, that's letting industry go out and figure out how to do it, and it gets us by the problem we have today where we have national energy model codes set that states are adopting in varying degrees and at varying levels. And then we have compliance issues. The federal legislation that's been put together also addresses that very important piece of it, not just putting the building energy codes down on paper, but assuring that the states, the inspectors are trained that there is compliance with those codes and putting money into the states to allow them to do that job. So I think that is very important. I think the incentives are very important, particularly in this bad economy. That's another area where if the federal government can twist a little bit out of the piggy bank and put some incentives in for businesses and consumers to begin to make efficiency upgrades, I think that's a game changer too. The last one that I would like to see them do, again, looking at not picking and choosing technology winners, but put a clean energy standard in place. You all probably have heard of a renewable portfolio standard or an energy efficiency standard. I think to get something through, we're going to have to just look at a clean energy standard, but tell utilities across the United States, because states are already doing this. I think there are 27 states with RPSs. Let's say you're going to deliver a certain percentage of what you're going to create and use to meet demand as clean energy. And that's something that's going to be a lot more difficult for this Congress than some of the other things, but I think it is something we should consider.
Yeah, I want to come back to you in a second, but Dick, yeah, go ahead.
A couple things we'd like to see. One is there are still a lot of hydrocarbons under the ground, and we're still going to be a hydrocarbon-based society for a while. And so we would like to see some consistency, Michael, in the outer continental shelf and in the gas fields onshore and things like that. You can produce this safely, and you can turn it into energy safely, but you need some sort of consistency. We need some mechanism.
Let me just pick you up. We've all read a lot in the last year, in particular, about gas shales. And are you seeing different regulatory environments and different local environmental challenges in different parts of the country?
Great question. Pennsylvania is a perfect example. A couple of months ago, they had all but shut down all of the gas operations. They're saying with the new folks in office now, they're going to probably open those back up. And so it's a very piecemeal thing, and that's where it's tough to invest money.
So politics and policy does have an impact.
Oh yes,
a big one.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
The thing about a carbon market, whether it's cap and trade or pricing the carbon, but I think us as a society have to come to grips with what is carbon worth long term. What type of legacy are we leaving? Is it valued at something? Because that changes the economic models. And then on things like transmission, we need to figure out how to build these transmission lines more efficiently and run it like the interstate highway system back in the 50s. That was done for a purpose. It's a little more different now because states' rights and federal rights have flipped around. But you put those things together. The consistency is really what you need.
I don't think China has that problem. I don't think if they want to if they want to drive a transmission thing from Guizhou into Sichuan, I think they can do it.
Could I say, I think there's one other thing we could, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Chuck used a term when we were talking a few hours ago in the room, and it's the same term we use, technology agnostic, and I believe Kateri did too. It's put the minds together, give them some incentives, and let the best technology.
And I also think you need to get rid of the I'm going to call it the quote junk in the market. We set appliance standards and equipment standards in this country once we can prove that there's enough in the market and it's cost effective at higher levels of efficiency. We need to roll the old inefficient products out of the market so that they're not there to confuse consumers, confuse businesses in the marketplace. We're doing a pretty good job of that. Actually, the manufacturers are working with the advocates. That's how we got the light bulb standards. That's how we got street lighting standards. We're having trouble getting them through the political system. The manufacturers have agreed that they will do this and that they will move to these more efficient products. Now we've got to codify that. And I just think that that's important because if you look at what's happened in the United States on energy efficiency, over the course of the last 30 years, because of technology innovation, and people like Chuck and his group and Shell and the wind, but through technology innovation and through public policy, we've been able to offset the need for about 50 quads of energy. That's roughly 50% of what we use today. Yeah. And we still have the potential to go further. And so I think that combination of innovation with public policy and pulling old inefficient stuff off the market is a really fine recipe for success.
Would you agree that there's a combination of long-term and short-term things, that there are short-term things that we will need to do in order to get to
I think if you don't do the short-term, you don't get to the long-term. I think you got to buy time with the short-term.
Yeah, I think we got to, there's one hidden piece of this, I think, at least when it comes to the electrical side of it, that I think we're missing, which is we got policy and we struggle to get it implemented because there's a huge force that doesn't want this to happen. The reality is there's businesses that make money selling energy every day. And we have regulated utilities, and we pay them more to invest in capacity. That's how it works. And for whatever reason, in the states that have the utilities that operate this way, we're afraid to regulate them. Right. And we're afraid because they don't want to lose their profits. I get it, they don't. They're not going to do anything.
We're not paying them more to provide less.
Sell less.
Sell less. It's a regulated utility. That means you get to regulate them.
What's even worse?
They don't, and what's funny is I hear these arguments, well, if you do, you're going to lose jobs. Come on, people. That's like saying if you pass CAFE standards, General Motors is going bankrupt. It went bankrupt anyways. So my point is, this is old technology thinking. Look, every technology innovation that's ever happened, the old guy says, don't do it, watch out, don't do it. And guess what? They all lose 9 out of 10 times. Because if you let the innovation go, it takes care of it. And I think what we got to do is what are the barriers to innovation and let it happen, but realize that the people with the money and the voice are slowing this down. And
they're really powerful, right? They're
really powerful. On our board of energy efficiency happens to be one of the largest power companies who has no interest in reducing their sales. Okay? They will comply, and I'm glad they support it because they are supporting other aspects, but at the end of the day, Duke Energy doesn't want to sell less energy. They get paid more to sell it today.
And I would take issue. It's not, I think what they want to do is be a profitable company. They have a keen interest, particularly their leader, in energy efficiency. The rules of the game aren't right, and to their credit, I think they tried and worked with, North Carolina has adopted a version of Save a Lot. I know it's
imperfect. Anyone from Duke Energy here?
Okay.
But I think,
let me tell you what
it's not the utilities being the big bad guys. The rules of the game, just like like you said, they have to make a profit.
Utilities
we have to change the rules, the regulatory rules around utilities. Unless and until we do that, we can't buy them fully into the game.
But we got to remember, they're trying to help us write rules to help themselves. It don't work that way.
I want question 4 up on the screen. Not question. Can the techies flip to question 3 and come to question 4, which is what is the best way government can contribute to a sustainable energy future? There you go. Allow more development of domestic energy assets. We all peer forward because our eyesight is going. E.g. offshore drilling, domestic shale oil, ANWR, create carbon cap and trade policy, create a carbon tax, responsible government-funded energy R&D, reward businesses and society using renewable energy, incentivize energy efficiency, invest in national grid upgrades, create national renewable energy portfolio standard.
How come you don't
all of the above?
All of the above. Number 9 is the answer.
But let's see. Go on. Let's see where we are.
Okay. Yay, efficiency, go.
Well, no one wants, Dick, no one wants your colleagues to do
Okay,
any
well,
more
let's
drilling.
talk about it.
I think,
Let's talk about this for a minute.
Go back to Houston and tell your friends that they're either coming to the wind side or they're out of business.
I can catch the 6 o'clock flight home, I think. So, no, but let's talk about this. Wait just a minute now. I'm not arguing with the others, but the current energy infrastructure, the power plants and everything, was built with regulated money. Every one of you in this room is paying for what was built when you pay your light bill. All of these new things we're talking about and renewables and alternatives are all going to be done by non-regulated money. And so where does that non-regulated money come from? Well, the oil companies have a fair amount, and Shell, we plowed $1.1 billion with the B dollars in last year to alternative research. We have $2 billion into a wind business. I sleep with an Exxon employee. I'm married to an Exxon employee. Her company.
Something wrong about that.
Hopefully it's the same person.
TMI.
Yeah. Well, but wait, they've invested a lot in algae and battery technology.
Right.
And
I love that
Chevron
algae
has
stuff. That's great. Yeah.
Our pilot plant's in Hawaii. Everybody wants to visit that one. We have algae too. Shell has. But the problem is, where's the money going to come from? Right. And fossil fuels is still this short-term thing. You've got to get through. And the regulated folks aren't going to have the money to do all of this capital-intensive stuff that you're getting into.
First of all, the Alliance to Save Energy, we're fuel neutral. I served a couple years ago on a National Petroleum Council study that was actually sponsored by Exxon, and looking at how do you ensure adequate supplies of oil and natural gas by the year 2030. And there are 5 strategies to get there, one being energy efficiency, and they recognize it, another being development of alternative fuels, because there's not going to be enough. So I think that more development, I mean, we all have to recognize what the realities of the day are. And when I said buy time with energy efficiency, so shave off the demand, because right now we are going to be dependent for the near term on fossil fuels. That buys us time to develop other alternatives. And I think that it's really important that we understand that. But let me just say, because you said that regulated folks and that all of the ratepayers are paying for new capacity, they're also, very importantly, in the regulated utilities, they're also currently paying for energy efficiency, and the investments are going up there. About $6 billion of ratepayer investments in energy efficiency in 2009. That was double what it was in 2006. So the utilities, they're not all bad, they're not all good, but the ratepayers through utilities are investing very significantly right now in energy efficiency, and I think we need to recognize that.
I'd be careful. They're not investing in energy efficiency. They're spending our money on the stuff because we had to give it to them so they could invest in it. So they're not investing.
Right.
They get to make a profit on that too. I mean, think about it. You've got businesses that get to charge us more, and then we give them the money, and they do these nice things called energy efficiency because we gave them the money. And the answer is they're under the funny assumption that all businesses are entitled to always make more profits. I'd say make them innovate. Make them play by different rules because they want the old rules and the new rules. That's what I think Duke's attempt was a nice idea, but their goal was they took Save a Watt and turned it into maximize the profits. That's why people got upset with it. It's conceptually, they're headed in the right direction, but the answer is if every time you do it, you're trying to maximize your profits. I get it. As a public company, that's what they're supposed to do. But what I'm saying is we're the public. We don't have to let them do it. Why do we sit here and take it?
Kateri, I hope we get some questions on that very point in just a few minutes. Kateri, you obviously won on that one.
Yeah,
you got 27%.
I think I've scared y'all.
But now I want to go a few more questions.
How are you going to drive your cars home?
I want to test whether people are really as keen on energy efficiency as they say they are. Let's do the question: what do you think will be the hottest energy job? In other words, the job most in demand in 2025. Can we go to that question? What do we think will be the hottest energy job, the one most in demand in 2025?
President of Shell WindEnergy.
There you go. Is it going to be a deep sea drilling operator in the Gulf? Wind turbine installer, a solar engineer, an energy trader, or an energy efficiency consultant? What's the hottest job in 2025?
I actually have a 6.
I think it's a nuclear engineer.
What's the hottest job in 2025? Okay, let's get the results out. It's the energy trader. Slightly sad answer, in my view.
You guys are killing me.
Now,
I flew all this way to be abused.
Did we put? I'm not sure where the techies are who I'm talking to, but did we put in the extra question? What do you think will be the highest paid energy job in 2025? Deep sea drilling operator, wind turbine installer, solar solar engineer, energy trader, energy efficiency consultant.
Michael, can
I actually think okay.
Oh,
You first.
Say,
I think there's another answer.
Let's see the results on this.
Engineer is, I mean, what's that?
Yeah.
I find that a little sad.
Well, here's the problem. If that's true,
I find that
we're going to have an economy that's in trouble.
Exactly. All right. So Chuck, go to that point.
You can't have an economy of just service jobs. Service who? At some point, if we don't do the other things and have the core manufacturing and the engineering jobs and the infrastructure jobs, the math doesn't work. I have to say, if that's true, we are really in trouble.
That's why I put
and as an
the question
economy,
in.
Look,
Yeah,
this
no,
idea you can be a
That's the
service
name.
economy might work when your economy is 3 to 4 times larger than any other economy in the world. In 2025, this will not be the largest economy in this country. It's going to be in China. And if we think we're going to keep building a service economy and none of the manufacturing or engineering or infrastructure that goes with it, I got to tell you, we're in trouble. And well, I hope that's not true.
We have, you know, to be honest with you, I would say there's a number 6, but I want to answer the engineer thing too. Number 6, I believe, is the person who can meld together different energy sources to make them work. And you know, I don't care if it's wind with solar, if it's wind with gas, it's gas with carbon, biofuels with something. At the end of the day, this thing is truly going to be a puzzle that gets put together. But on the engineer thing, we have a really interesting thing happening in Shell. About 12 years, late 90s, we would hire the engineers in, brilliant young people. The first thing they would do would go get their MBA and get the hell out of Dodge. And it's scary. And so these same people, many of them who weren't even born when I went to work for Shell, which is frightening, but they'll come in and they're in a quandary. What do you do now? And they say, Dick, you know, Shell has great educational reimbursement. They'll help me get my EMBA. I'll do all this. You know, what should I do? And I said, do you enjoy being an engineer? Did you work hard for 5 years to get that engineering degree? So why don't you stay here and be an engineer for a while and contribute something and what have you? And I think this backs up the food chain, and I think you said we could talk about it later. But how do you get the younger people in high schools and college?
Well, I put this question in just earlier today because we'd had the what do you think was going to be the hottest job, and I thought, well, let's drill down.
But Chuck's right.
And it is actually an astonishingly revealing answer, and a worrying, and in my view, a worrying one.
Here's the good news, I don't think it's accurate, and here's why. Because at the end of the day, there's a supply-demand curve for certain jobs. And those highest paid jobs, if energy traders, what everyone here is doing, that might be the highest paying job here, but it won't be the highest paying job, and the job won't be here. There'll be engineering jobs that are solving these problems, that integrate the ideas, whatever field. And I think solar engineers, think of it more as an engineering related to this energy field. Engineering related to solving the world's water problems and the world's energy problems, there's going to be a lot of money to be made there because there's a limited, you're solving a fundamental problem. Trading energy between people, there'll be something to that, but I really think you're going to see it. I think as a country we have a problem. There are not going to be enough engineers to fill the jobs we have.
I think there's another issue. I mean, this is a very limited number of jobs, and if you start thinking about our energy system and what's going to be out there and where we're going, Dick was talking about computers and the wind turbines. Well, our whole IT system is underpinning a drive towards efficiency right now. And so you have data centers that are gobbling up energy equivalent of Argentina or the Netherlands, and it's supposed to quadruple in the next 10 to 15 years. But while we're doing that, we will be putting in place enabling technologies that will lower energy use by 5-fold, and the carbon that's put out by those enabling technologies 5-fold. So I think you have to start thinking about, too, what are the other jobs that are going to be created and the innovative enabling technologies that we're going to be placing into the energy field. And that's where I hope you get some of the manufacturing.
I tell you what, let's get some questions from some of the people in the audience who 10 minutes ago thought they were going to be energy traders, but have now been persuaded by you guys to decide that they want to be wind turbine engineers in North Dakota.
But you have to have energy to trade. Right.
Yeah.
You have to have energy to trade.
Exactly. So let's we've got some more questions. Some questions are coming in by text. This is really throwing me. I've really got to be multimedia here. And there are 2 microphones around. So actually, you know, let's do it the old-fashioned way for a minute. Let's see if we can get some live questions, and then we'll go to some of the questions by text. Anyone a question for our 3 absolutely fantastic panelists? Or have you all been texting? Lady right there in the second row. Thank you.
First, thank you all for being here today. That's amazing to be here and listening to you. But on that question, I think what my concern is, and I'm certainly not going to be the engineer you want, but who needs to be encouraging young engineers, for example, in the U.S.? I feel like everybody answers traders, the one who's going to be paid the best and the hottest job, because that we know we have those types of jobs available for people in the U.S., and it's encouraged, almost maybe too encouraged. And where do you think the encouragement is going to come for people to take those engineering jobs, pursue that in their career as well as education?
Thank you for asking that question, because at Shell, we've been struggling with this for 20 years, and at the current time, we're reaching back as far as the 6th and 7th grade now. And we sponsor a group called Breakthrough, and there's a bunch of them around the country, but you reach in and you get gifted and talented kids from underserved areas, and you pick them up in 6th grade, and you have a year-long process, and then during the summer, and the whole goal is to get them into college and expose them of things and what have you. We are a member of A+ Challenge. We bring teachers and principals in and let them spend a week at Shell offices to see what kind of jobs there are, because the beauty of this space is we need electrical engineers, we need mechanical engineers, we need civil engineers, but we need financial people, we need environmental engineers, we need accountants, we need communications people. Half of our project is now we call it the non-technical stuff, but it is how do you sell it and what have you. And what troubles me with this whole thing is that I judge the Houston Science Fair, and I have for many years, and there's 2 divisions. There's a 7th and 8th grade, and there's a 9th through 12th. And the 7th and 8th grade is typically won by a young woman, and you can tell very quickly that they have done the work, they understand what's going on. I'm going to get emotional, sorry. But you understand what they're doing. When 9th grade comes around, there are no young women left in the curriculum. So part of why I'm involved in Breakthrough and why Shell puts so much into this is that you've got to reach way back in this food chain, and you've got to get mentors. Here, everybody in this room should have a piece of homework to go home and mentor a young person through this process. Kateri's business, Chuck's business, there's all kinds of things that you can expose them to.
Chuck, you wanted to come in on that too.
So I get involved with some university work in Milwaukee, and we actually have a program where you start in about the 5th or the 6th grade and specifically bring in kids in the city, show them what engineering is. One of the biggest problems with engineering or any of the technical fields is people aren't exposed to it early enough, and so they never make that. And what's fun, you can actually do some pretty simple things and make it fun, but here's the key. Find kids that really are motivated to, in many cases, break their family's economic cycle and show them what you can make as an engineer. One of the amazing things we have is we find our recruiting out of the inner city to be one of the best places we find engineers, because the families understand the value of a well-paying job and a one that's going to be in demand. And so it's interesting. It's almost a social cultural thing, and I'm only exposed to it in with small schools. I'm sure other universities do things like this, but it wasn't done purely for social reasons. It was an engineering school that needed more students. It was in a city, so instead of waiting for them to come, we went out and recruited them basically early. And it's no different than Duke going out and finding bright people to come join the MBA program. You can do it, and the math is driving. This is, in Milwaukee, the math is driving that engineering school to do it because they needed more students, and it's been amazing. And what's interesting,
very interesting.
And what's interesting, the demographics, we don't have any demographic issues, whether it be male or female. It's truly socioeconomic is what you find is where the motivation is. Show a kid in a family, oftentimes first-generation college students, what they can accomplish, and you change the dynamic. And so I think there's lots of tricks. The question is, are we motivated to do it? And it's actually your survey that's the problem, right? We tell kids today to be an energy trader.
Yeah.
We tell them to go to Wall Street. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with those jobs. We need them. But you got it. There's no energy to trade if there's no industry to trade it for, right? You got to have something to build these pieces around. And So I think part of it is really a bit social, and I think we can do it. There's lots of grassroots efforts, but I think it obviously can be done broader. I mean, let's face it, part of Cree's success, one of our best scientists is a Duke engineer. I know it's hard to believe, but I say that for those who don't know because Cree was founded by NC State engineers.
Kateri,
I'll just make 2 quick points. One, this is good news for anybody 30 or under in this room that has an interest in the energy business. The MPC study I mentioned showed that 50% of energy industry folks will be retiring between now and 2020. So I think that you're going to see a lot of recruitment going on college campuses across a wide variety. Second thing I wanted to mention, the Alliance to Save Energy runs something called a Green Campus program, where we actually have interns on campuses. It's confined right now to California, but we're on 19 campuses there, where we actually have paid interns who are running efficiency projects and contests. And we're graduating those interns into jobs in the energy efficiency arena. We have about 110 interns right now. Out of the last class, I think we had about 15 go directly into the energy efficiency business. So we're doing our share, trying to on recruiting.
I think those are tremendously heartening and uplifting answers from all three of you. But, you know, I don't think we should leave this afternoon without the message coming plainly from the three of you, as I think it does, which is that slide that we just saw a minute ago demonstrates that we have a problem. I mean, we are persuading our best young scientific and engineering minds, wherever they come from, to leave their specialties and leave it very, very early. And that's something that I'll leave with Dean Shepard and others. Let's have some more questions at the back. Gentleman right up at the back there, I can see, and then another one over on the right-hand side. Can I see some more text questions, incidentally, my techie friends? Thank you. I didn't like those ones.
We'll find one we can answer.
I'll find one, yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much. Mr. Williams, you mentioned that Shell has invested in biofuels.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering, have they looked into using cooking oil, recycled cooking oil, and converting that to biofuels? And secondly, what do you see as the future for biofuels in the U.S. and abroad?
Well, first of all, most of our biofuels use is palm or soil or rapeseed based, so it's the FAME method. It's not the vegetable oil thing. We handle and distribute over 9 billion liters a year worldwide. We think we are the leaders. So the key on that one is the farmland issues, land use issues, and the sustainable development of that, because we're very careful that the material we use for our biofuels is actually bonded, that it hasn't been in a clear-cut situation, rainforest degradation, things like that. And so that closes our market down to
which is tricky, right? Because palm oil is
palm oil,
fantastically efficient fuel.
It's tremendously efficient, but they've clear-cut.
I know.
Literally countries to do this stuff,
and so and look down at
so we have to work hard there. We feel there is a big need for biofuels here in the United States. We just invested. It'll end up being a $12 billion investment in Brazil with Cosan to actually make more ethanol, bring it up here. Right now, we're blending ethanol at about 10%. And the most that you blend biodiesel is either a 5% or a 10% blend. You can't burn straight biodiesel in a vehicle. Some of the ethanol, you can burn the 85, but there's probably a handful of those stations. So we think there is a continued use of it. We think you can probably, looking at the numbers, probably double or triple what you're doing today, but it'll still be in the single digits of the overall motor fuel use.
Biofuel-powered planes? I mean, I know Branson did it last year. But
we are in a research consortium working with Rolls-Royce and some, and we're actually looking at Jatropha-based fuels. So yes, we are in that too. So.
Gentlemen, in that area, I thought I saw a hand in that area right there. Maybe I didn't. Yeah, another lady over exactly. Precisely. Right there. Right.
Hi, thank you again for coming. My question is really related to going back to Will, and his discussion in his paper was about second-grade heat use. And we've talked a lot today about all these changes we want to make, and I think one of the questions that was asked was, you know, which one of these is the most impactful? And if you look down and it came out as energy efficiency, but if you combined the carbon tax and the cap and trade, that actually probably would have come out at equal or higher to the one that ended up being number one. So I think if we go back to the discussion of if we have a market, it will spur on entrepreneurial growth. And so I don't necessarily, as a business person, I don't necessarily say like go government and add a bunch of more money into the more policy, but I also think with energy it's a unique situation that we need to drive change. And so what is your opinion on the best way for policymakers to drive change? Is it creating a market and therefore we could have things like second heat use and we could have new entrepreneurs, or is it actually having that policy available?
Chuck?
Well, I'll be honest, I'm an engineer. I actually think a market is something you make something and sell it. I think this idea of trading things to each other that don't exactly exist, I think it's nice. You're not really doing anything. I mean, the idea of telling one guy you can waste energy and trade it with a guy who saves energy, no. Get everyone, energy efficiency, if you raise the standards, it will drive innovation. If you want, the entrepreneurs can solve this problem, but I don't think you solve it with a market. Yeah, cap and trade might have worked. It's not going to happen now. I think an energy tax would work. I'm not saying we should have one. I guarantee you the price signal works. The SUV model is the best example. $4 a gallon of gas killed the SUV when the auto company said no one would ever give them up. We're not going to have that in the short term. So I think what we have to say is, let's create goals that drive people to go solve them. And let's find the entrepreneurs who solve them, however they get there. And I think this idea of creating this market of trading energy, I'd rather raise the standards, because here's the problem. If you create this market, you're artificially allowing the inefficient things to stay longer than they need to. It's kind of like letting General Motors wait 20 extra years to fix their fuel efficiency. And I pick on them because I used to work in the auto industry, but I mean, they worked like crazy to stop that innovation. If they would have just done the innovation, the bankruptcy never happens. Sure. And I guess that's my concern. I worry that those markets, while they do cause some short-term behavior, that's okay, they're not really we're not creating any sustainable value, we're trading. And my point to the previous thing is, trading things is nice, but if you really want to move the game forward, let's solve the base problem, which is, in my case, it's efficiency, but even in the alternative energies, let's do things that drive the innovation to force the fundamental change, because we shouldn't do things to prop up the people that are going to lose anyways. That's just bad money chasing a bad idea.
While we're beating up on GM, in a friendly way, of course, let's go to the question that asks what we think the price of a gallon of gas will be in the US in 2025. Can we put that one up? I'd like to see everyone on this.
Do you want us to answer any of these? Big
yeah, we'll get those in a minute.
I'm willing to take up.
Can we get to the gas price question? Here we go. 2025, $2 or less, in your dreams, pal. 3, 4, 5, 6 or more. Where do we go? That's in $2010. The Economist asked me over here.
Chinese unit of currency.
The yen, isn't it? Oh no, that's Japanese.
In $2010.
Check what's the Chinese unit of currency.
Okay, 46%. Can we go to the electric car question? Just bear that in mind. 46% think it's going to be $6 or more. Let's go to the electric car
Chuck
car
thought
question.
it was a Chinese number. so.
What percentage of the global auto market will be electric in 2025? Less than 10, and then you can see the others down to more than 50. So you've all just said the price of gas is going to be more than $6. Let's see where you come up on this.
It's 1 or 2.
Not at $6.
I don't think it's going to make it.
It's
You're pretty pessimistic, I would say.
Well, think about how long it took. What's the Prius today is about 2.5% of the U.S. market.
If that.
It's been in the market 11, 12 years. I actually think that those are fairly optimistic.
Fairly optimistic numbers.
Yeah.
I think at $6 a gallon, you'll see the innovation. You'll see the companies jump into the game. It won't be GM. They'll drive the innovation, and this will be completely different. This is what you're missing. At $6, I'm getting into the electric car business. I can make money.
That's why
So I think that's the point. If you really believe it's going to 6,
Right.
I think what we're probably saying is we're not sure that's going to happen.
But you said it's going to be 6. If it were $6 today, I would think those
No.
numbers are low.
But even
If I
if you
believed
got
it
it,
was
it's gonna
going
get
to be
there.
6.
But this is only 15 years, and to make a sea change in 15 years is pretty tough. And so that's why I think it's a 10
So you
10
have
or a
to
12%
have electric charging stations, or you have to have hydrogen.
I also don't think you get to $6 a gallon unless the lady up there gets her price on carbon, whether it's through cap and trade or whether it's through a tax, however you apply it. We're indifferent to how it gets done. You've got to price carbon or you're not going to get those conventional fuels that high.
15 years. So in 1995, think about almost everything you did and look at how much innovation has changed things. Anything can happen in this amount of time. I agree there's got to be a signal to drive it. And I think really what we're saying is we're not convinced there's going to be a signal to drive this innovation. But it could happen. And I think that's the missing point. If we want these things to happen, we need to have a signal policy, whatever we want to do. And you got to be careful because I think there's lots of negative repercussions of some of these things. But if you truly had it, this could easily happen because the technology is not inherently expensive. In scale, it could get there.
But you know what? I believe we will have more advanced motor fuels by then, too.
I agree.
Because we are spending a lot of the money that I talked about that we spend is in motor fuel research and fuel
So you'll have
fuel saving.
biodiesels that get you 300 miles a gallon.
I don't think 300.
Oh,
Don't
come
put
on.
those words in my mouth.
Come
Don't do it.
So let me ask a question. If film was 20 cents a cartridge, how much film would we buy today? We'll have a lot more of it. It'll be cheap. I don't think light bulbs are relevant in 15 years. I don't think film's relevant anymore. And by the way, I was here when we still had film cameras, and everyone said it'll take a long time. And I honestly think that if there was a signal, there are things about innovation we cannot predict. What happens is it's like saying we understand what someone's behavior will change when you change fundamental rules. Whoever thought we'd all listen to music on an iPod? It's not even a logical thing, right? But what happens is innovation creates two things. It goes to solve a problem, and other things happen. I'm not convinced. I don't know what will happen. But if electric cars happen, I'm not sure it matters what happens in fuels. Because if it truly meant I came home at night, pulled my car in, and I drove it out the next day, and I never had to screw with the gas station because it charged itself on the grid in my house, I can imagine a reason that just because of my habits, I would do something different. So I think I agreed it's not likely to happen. But I think all this could happen. And I think the innovation doesn't solve usually one problem, it solves two. It's kind of back to the point of, we talked about the CFL and trying to drive behavior.
Right.
One of the things we've got to remember is one of the reasons people don't like CFLs is they're lousy. They don't look good.
No, they don't look
they're
good.
improving.
But it doesn't matter.
I-
There is no big consumer change that happened where people said, this is lousy, let's buy more of them.
They do not look good. You're right.
You buy your iPod because it's more convenient than what
He's
you...
an LED manufacturer, but there are
No, I'm a
CFLs that
realist.
look really good, folks.
I'm telling you,
I'll sell you
study
V-Power
consumer
afterwards.
behavior. This is not a debate. The consumer behavior argument goes over and over. You can't sell someone a replacement that's inferior to what they, in their mind, is what they have today.
But Chuck, that's why the standards that were set, and we were part of them, so if you hate the light bulbs you see in a couple of years, you can blame the Alliance.
They don't
because
need those
but-
light bulbs.
But they're technology neutral, so it's not just CFLs. It's LEDs, it's halogens, it's whatever can meet the standard. So to your point, it should drive innovation, and it should create a light bulb that satisfies consumers' desires.
The problem is the standard is so low that I could make it with 1935 technology.
All right, we got some text questions. We have to make at least some ritual obeisance to new technology.
These are electric.
When does Mr. Williams think that the Atlantic wind connection will carry its first elections? Mr. Williams? Tell us.
don't go out and buy stock on this. That's my disclaimer. I have my youngest son just entered college this year. I think he'll be out of college.
Interesting.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and if y'all want to stay afterwards, we built and operate an offshore wind farm. And we do it in Holland, and we've learned a lot of things. And I can tell you, that is a tough nut to crack right there. So to show wind energy make money, yes, we do. And you asked earlier, or Dan did, how fitting inside a large corporation, we have to pay our way. And so I'm able to make cash, and I'm able to fund business development and turn money back. So,
Chuck, see this question
I love this
here?
one, yeah.
CFL is cheaper than LED. Why ever consider LED?
What's funny is it's not. It's not. So the question is that if you were to go out and change your lights, you're actually going to spend more by buying CFLs than you will buy LEDs. In a downlight app, in this application here, the most expensive solution is what they have. The second most is CFL, and the most cost-effective will be LED. Will it cost you more up front? Absolutely. Will people pay that? I know you're all going to say no, but my guess is that if that's true, why would you buy a $100 digital camera when you could buy a $10 throwaway camera? Because it's a different value proposition. And I'll tell you, here's the coolest part. We put a product into Home Depot 3 weeks ago. They weren't sure anyone would buy it. It's $50. It's a replacement to the light in your house. It's a downlight replacement.
Yeah.
So, and they weren't sure. Right, there you go. Yeah.
There you go.
Did you buy it?
I didn't buy it. It was way too expensive.
Because it was too expensive.
Get it back.
It was too expensive. Is that why you didn't buy it?
Yeah, no.
See, that's the point. He's a gas guy.
It didn't have the
See, he's in collusion.
wattage. It didn't have the wattage I wanted.
So what's interesting is that we're not there yet to do this broadly, but what we found is, and this was shocking to us, we put it out in the stores, and actually more people buy a $50 LED downlight replacement than buy a $20 LED light bulb replacement. Interesting. Because the one fundamentally solves a problem. What they're doing is they're not changing a light bulb for 20 years. They're making a different investment. And people believed, Home Depot did not believe the consumer would get it. And you know what it takes to get it? An end cap at the Home Depot saying, 20 years, here's your cost. Yeah. And people put it in and they don't bring it back because it works as good or better than what they have, unlike those lousy CFLs.
But that's, but to your point though, the education is critical.
Sure.
If you didn't have that end cap, if you didn't tell people what the value proposition was, they probably wouldn't be selling the way they are. I mean, you've got a great
That was
product.
a supply push. You did a supply push there.
We actually, what's interesting is I think the consumer's smarter than we give them credit. I really think we've underestimated. 2.5% might be the Prius, but if you look at what they thought they'd sell, they sold a whole lot more than they thought.
Right.
There's one question I really want to get to. What innovations will drive energy efficiency in emerging and developing economies, which of course is where 84% of the world's population live? What do you see there that's exciting?
I saw something really cool at Sandia Labs yesterday. I was out in New Mexico, and there was a company that, and I think Chuck talked about the water issue before, and out in the emerging world, it's the water and the electricity. Those are the two things. And what this company had was they have this wonderful water filtration system that works really, really neat, but it takes power. And so they had this water filtration system, and Sandia married them with one of their solar partners. And they have this roll-out thing. It looks like a stadium blanket. And you just roll it out on the ground, and you put the purifier, and you drop the hose in the thing, and you plug in a plug, and it's totally self-contained. And that's the kind of innovation that I think is really neat. And it's something those folks need power to power their iPads and their iPhones, because they have phone service out there. But they really need the water. And the water's the thing that I think they're going to...
Two quick things. One on water. We do a program in developing economies called WaterG, where we go in and work with municipal utilities that are delivering water to close leaks, to balance pumps, and it's amazing. Small investments in places in Mexico, South Africa, India, that pay back for themselves in a matter of weeks, not months or years, are saving enormous amounts of water and energy. And it's a project and a program that's being replicated and growing very quickly because of the benefits of it. So I think that's a really neat one. The other is just distributed generation. You know, getting power, creating it, getting it at the local area versus building a whole huge infrastructure, because they don't have that now. And so I think you're going to see an innovation in that area as well that's going to be very important.
Yeah, I think the upfront cost is the discussion everywhere. So if you can eliminate infrastructure, I think there's things they'll do. So anything that plays to efficiency and reduces, in a lot of cases there is no infrastructure, so how do you replace that? And I think that probably drives it first. The second thing that's kind of interesting is that where there is infrastructure, some of the most expensive energy in the world is in these developing countries. There's actually a huge price signal there already. Now, there's a little bit of a gap to get over because this payback argument, if you think it's hard to make a payback argument here, it's really hard to make a payback argument in India right now or in some other countries. But the energy cost today is high enough. I actually think they have a price signal for a lot of other reasons, and it actually lends itself to alternative energies better than here. I think one of our biggest problems, and North Carolina is a great example, is when you're paying 4 cents or 5 cents a kilowatt hour, there's no price signal here. And so I think we've got to get some of the basic, the big cost up front has to come down, but I actually think you'll see the developing countries embrace energy efficiency, or actually alternative energy, wind specifically, where you can get the upfront cost down. I think you'll see that go faster because there's not a cheap alternative, I guess is my point.
And the thing that I'd like to see, can I answer the question? The thing that I'd like to see is massive technological breakthroughs in clockwork.
In what?
In clockwork. In my friend Rory Steer, who worked with Nelson Mandela and the South African government to do clockwork radios right through South Africa. Incredible breakthrough. Just think how the lives of hundreds of millions of people in Africa and India would be improved if you could have a clockwork fridge, which now you can't. In other words, something that didn't need a power source at all, other than something you could crank.
That's interesting.
That's very good.
No,
So there you go, guys. You know,
well,
come up with a clockwork fridge, and then give me a call. You get a story in Time and Fortune, I tell you.
there's a company in Houston right now. It's actually quite fascinating. They have married solar with wind, and it's a vertical egg beater design, but it's quite different in that instead of putting the solar panel on the blade, they have formed the solar panel into the blade.
Wow.
And so the actual panel is the blade, and this thing works.
And that's a Houston company.
Yes.
Very
yeah. So just oil.
We have had an absolutely fabulous time up here on the platform. So yet again, I want to thank everyone from Duke for being such wonderful hosts, Dean Shepard, Dan. Again, I acknowledge Will in our midst. But won't you please, before we go to the reception, which I guess is just outside, I'm kind of slightly losing my geography. That way? That way. I'd like to ask you to do two things. First of all, I have to ask you to answer some questions about whether you've enjoyed the session, which I think will come up on the screen. Will they?
Oh, wow.
Will they come up on the screen?
Do we get to vote?
And this is also to be terribly confidential, is the first thing I was supposed to tell you. Here we go. Please rate the following out of 10. Overall value of attending, quality of discussion. Overall value of attending. Guess that's the first one. 1. Done? Oh, we're not seeing the results of these, are we? No.
Yeah, I would really not know.
Quality of discussion.
I have to go drink more.
There you go. Got that one? Good. Very good. 3, choice of panelists.
It's the bad one.
Very good. Yeah.
The oil guy.
Formative event. Okay, so I'm done on that. Dan, I'm looking to you for guidance. Done on that? Okay. The second thing that I want you to all do before... Oh, no, wait! Oh, wait! How do you feel about the Sponsors Association with today's event? Do. Very high. Better be. Shell, even higher.
Just go buy a tank of V-Power.
Are you allowing people to vote twice like this?
Time and Fortune, what can I say? I'm not going to say anything. Okay, is that it? Okay, so the last thing that I want you to do before we break for the reception next door, that way, Dean Shepherd and I think, is to give a huge thank you round of applause to Chuck, Kateri, and Dick. Thank you all so much.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.